Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for taking the time out this morning to join us. Very early webinar, but you'll find out why in a second, why we had to schedule it this early. So I wanted to welcome Jonathan, Elias, and Matthew to our webinar as well. They're joining us from N-able, Eli and Matthew from Australia, Jonathan all the way from the UK. There's a couple of things we wanted to talk to today about N-able, covering off their new reseller program, and a couple of other things that are coming up in 2025. Just a brief introduction from myself. So some of you do know me, those of you who don't, my name is Tyron Warren. I'm the product manager here at Bluechip. If you don't know that, I've looked after N-able for quite some time, both in the past and recently, and I'm pretty excited to be back with the brand again. So that's a brief introduction from myself. I'll hand over to Jonathan, who's going to just introduce himself, Eli and Matthew, and then kick off the presentation.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for joining so early. I think the reason it's probably my fault, is it, that you're joining so early, because in the UK it's 11 p.m, so it's a little bit late. So we had to try and balance the times. But genuinely, thank you for joining. Yeah, so we can't get Matthew to talk. We've deliberately muted him because we didn't want to listen to him. But Matthew Drake is having some technical issues, but he's our VP of ANZ, and then I'm going to be joined shortly after my presentation. Elias is going to step in and talk a little bit about how we're moving into more of a cyber resilience direction from an organization. The idea of the presentation today really is to do a couple of things. First of all, to introduce N-able to those of you that might know a little bit about who we are, but also might not know the right things about who we are. And we want to use this opportunity to first of all change the perception. I want to talk a little bit about why we're moving from not just being an MSP organization, but moving into a reseller organization as well. And then Elias, who's our sales director down in the ANZ region as well, will then start to talk a little bit more about the technology and how that's helping us become a cyber resilience organization. I suppose it's just a brief intro from me, because I appreciate you probably don't know who I am, although I may have come across you in my past life. I spent 15 years prior to here at Sophos. I think most of you probably know who they are. And then prior to that, McAfee. I've always been involved in channels. I've been working in channels since 1998. I suspect some of you probably weren't born then. And I've been at N-able for just over 8 months, so quite a short stint here so far. But already we are achieving quite a significant amount. So first check, I just want to make sure that you can see the change in my slide, because we as an organization at Teams or Zoom, and this is webinar, which I haven't used for about a year. So bear with us as we get through the technical difficulties. So first of all, let's just talk about the perception of N-able. I think many of you will be in one of probably two camps. Firstly, maybe unsure who N-able are, full stop. Secondly, know who you are, but aren't you an organization that reaches the end user via MSP? And that predominantly is who we've been for a very long time. And it's important that we don't shy away from that. We've been in business for over 20 years. We're a large organization with turnover roughly $500 million. And we're managing 8 million endpoints via roughly 25,000 MSPs. And some of those endpoints now we manage via resellers. For me, it's important to bring those stats, not just to say, look, we've been around for a long time, but more importantly, if we're an organization that has had challenges with technology or challenges with how we manage accounts, I don't believe that we would have been in business for that long, and equally, I don't believe we would have continued to grow and certainly grow the partnerships we have. But more importantly than that, for me, we've always been working as a channel organization and continue to work as a channel organization. And for us, the evolution from going from an MSP into channel, into reseller channel, isn't an or decision, it's an and decision. We've identified that there is a massive opportunity in the market, and there has been a huge push from our MSPs to build a resell motion as well. And what's happened over the last couple of years has been quite significant. It's almost been as if it's planned, that the stars have lined up for us as we've evolved ourselves from being an MSP to a reseller organization. And that really started about 3 years ago. And this is why we've decided to make this move. So 3 years ago, we were receiving a lot of feedback from our MSPs that they were frustrated because we didn't give them the option to resell. We had an MSP program. We had a fantastic, and we continue to have a fantastic MSP program. But in terms of being able to just resell the technology to their customers who may have evolved, who may have grown, that didn't necessarily want to buy or purchase a managed service from them, we didn't give them that option. And it meant that they had a couple of choices. One, they would go and talk to another vendor, a competing vendor, and they didn't always particularly want to do that. And believe it or not, some MSPs were so loyal that they'd rather lose the customer than go and talk to a competitor. But equally, as an organization, what we were seeing is that if a MSP went and talked to another competitor of ours, that potentially that competitor would have an MSP program as well, and potentially we would see that that customer move in completeness. So we decided to build a channel motion 3 years ago in North America. That was incredibly successful in what was quite a limited scope of program. In fact, I'll tell you the basics of the program. It's quite interesting. We had two margins: 15% if we passed you a lead and 35% if you bought us a lead. There was no deal registration program. There was no advantage for committing to certain revenue tiers. There was no training or education or enablement. It was a very, very basic program, just designed to allow that transactional motion. But that did create a significant business for us. And then a year ago, as an organization, we decided to take that a step further. We decided to invest quite significantly in resources, in systems, and in platforms to make sure that we could properly build a global channel business. I joined in September, taking the mantle of bringing that vision to life, and have been working for the last 8 months with a pretty decent team of people to bring that to life. And we've invested significantly in the number of people we brought into that business, and we've started to do things like build proper back-end systems. We have a new deal registration portal, which is also enabling our partners to become fully trained and educated on N-able. But then something else happened. In December, we completed the acquisition of an organization called Adlumin. And for those of you who don't know who Adlumin are, and I suspect that will be many because they're predominantly focused in North America, they are a security services software organization that effectively provide MDR and XDR services to customers. So we built this channel business, albeit very basic, 3 years ago. 2 years ago, we decided to expand that investment internationally, and then we've acquired a cybersecurity company, which has made us much more than a cybersecurity organization, much more than a backup or a unified endpoint company, but has made us a fully fledged cyber resilience company. And what we then started to look at is what was happening in the market. And it wasn't just the fact that MSPs were saying they wanted us to have a resale motion. We actually saw that many customers weren't just buying through MSPs, but also were buying through the resale motion as well. If we just look at data protection, which is of course one of the areas that N-able focuses in, we can see that over 50% of the market is buying outside of that MSP market, and really 60% of that resale motion is buying in the space that N-able typically play in, that what we would call the mid-market, kind of any organization that's about 200 employees up to about 5,000 employees. But then we started to talk to partners, and one of the processes I went through specifically when I joined N-able, or in joining N-able, was starting to talk to organizations like yourselves in different countries that I've worked with over the past 20 years, just to understand, was there a place for someone like N-able in this market? And I wanted to gain feedback of what was happening, because in order for us to be successful, there has to be a position for N-able. And what I was hearing was that, unlike many of the last 20 years that I've been in this market, there seemed to be really two decisions that a partner could make. One, they could go and work with the more established organizations, those organizations that have been in place for a long time, have incredible maturity in terms of their support infrastructure and their systems, large resource pools, but also depend very heavily on maintaining their large customer base. And in maintaining that large customer base, what we've started to see in the market is those types of organizations start to reduce significantly their focus on profitability for partners around incumbency, but also in some instances actually removing those incumbency programs in total as well. And that's not just something that we've recognized, but if you look at the survey that Canalys did over a quarter ago, or last quarter, the one question they asked, the number one question they asked all of their partners was, what is the biggest frustration that you currently have with vendors? And the answer was from across EMEA, the biggest challenge right now is that vendors do not appreciate that partners are managing the life cycle of those customers. So what we have is we have these large organizations that have big customers. They want to maintain those customers, but they don't want to share the profitability with the partners. And what's frustrating more than anything is that it's those very partners that brought those customers to that vendor in the first place. And equally, it's the areas that you want to focus on, so new customer acquisition and expand, where you effectively maintain most profitability, where those organizations are not wanting to focus. On the other side of the spectrum, we have the startups. Now, I've always been a fan of startups. They have the more exciting, the more sexy technology that customers want to look at in order to help them resolve challenges that they have today. And we've acquired a number of startups. Our Cove backup solution was an acquisition, and we've recently acquired Adlumin, as I previously mentioned, as a security solution, so a security services and software organization. But that's what tends to happen with startups. They either get purchased, they kind of wither on the vine, or they just continue as a smaller company. And most startups, although they have that relevant technology, struggle with resources and struggle with the maturity of their back-end systems, their support infrastructure. And when we talk to partners, what we hear is we'll work with one team for a year and then we'll work with a slightly different team in the following year, and that we know those organizations are on a funding cycle. So what we find is they're very pressured in trying to close deals. They're very transactional focused. So unlike the larger organizations who are focused more on those longer term relationships, those startups are focused very much on the transactional. And so N-able kind of finds itself in that middle ground. And what's quite unusual is in the past 20 years, there have been always a number of organizations in that middle ground. And right now, that seems to be a gap that N-able can 100% fill. That's effectively where we're coming into the market. We are an established organization. We employ over 2,000 people globally. We have maturity of a support infrastructure. We have maturity of systems. We've just spent the last 6 months building out new systems for our channel motion. And we want to build long-term relationships. We're not under pressure to hit certain numbers in this motion because we have a $500 million backing from our MSP business already. So this is about building longevity in the market and building a large customer base. However, of course, at the moment, we are predominantly focused on new customer acquisition and expand. And I think the other important bit of feedback that I've always had from partners is what are the things that are interesting to a partner when they're looking at working with a vendor. And these are the things that we've built into how we go to market with our reseller motion, how we build our program. And the first thing, of course, is making sure that we are a profitable organization for you. We've built our program on the premise that the average retained margin in the cybersecurity space is 19%. And in the data backup space, the average retained is roughly 15%. That's data that I've gained from some research I did in a previous organization, but also that I work with Canalys on. So we haven't just made sure that we are presenting a fancy slide that has lots of high margins on it, but equally, I'm very aware after doing this for a long time that the important thing is making sure that we execute accurately and deliver those margins to you so you retain them. They're not just on a slide and presented, but they are actually achievable to retain. But equally making sure that we appreciate that you are managing the life cycle of that customer and including incumbency programs in our overall partner program. And then secondly, and I think this for me is probably one of the most important elements, is to make sure that we do have technology that isn't just exciting to you as business owners or business leaders, but also is exciting to your teams and your sales, your frontline sales teams and your frontline sales engineers. If they're not interested in the technology, if they're not excited, they're not going to position it. But equally, they need to be confident that when they're positioning something to their customers, that those customers will relate to that and it's a priority for them. And I think most of us are aware now by the various presentations that we've seen, and I'm sure we'll see more of it over the coming years, that security and backup are probably the number one, or at least in the top 3 priorities for organizations and have been for the last 5 to 10 years, and will probably continue to be, certainly as AI continues to evolve and get more involved in that cyber attack space. And then, of course, it's about making sure that we are easy to do business with. And as I said, we haven't just started to change how we work, we've completely evolved everything back end. We've now got this front facing portal, which is the one pane of glass for you and your team to go into, where you can find all the information you need on N-able, all the information you need to go and talk about N-able to your customers. If you want to become accredited, we will have technology accreditations in that portal within the next 3 months as well. And it's a place where you can go and register deals and also manage and track opportunities that you're working on with us as well. In the future, we also plan to have our renewals managed in that portal as well. So you've got one place to manage all of your N-able accounts. And really, it's more about making sure that your frontline sellers and the people that work in your organization are not bogged down with activities that impact their ability to generate revenue. And that's not effectively what we want to impact. And then, of course, it's about making sure that we have teams in place, local teams in place that are credible, that you feel confident about bringing in to your customers. And that's a really important point, and something that many vendors fall over on, which is fantastic technology, fantastic program, but actually, do they have the right people that can help you spread that story and share that story and explain who we are as an organization with your customers? And that's something that I'm very confident that both Matthew and Elias are building in the local region. I'm sure they can talk to you about that more one-on-one as well, about the support that we have locally. And then after you make that decision to work with N-able and invest all your time and energy, I think the one frustration I always hear from partners is, that's great, but then we go and sell a product and we're done. With N-able, we have a multitude of solutions. I talked about the 3 specific areas that we focus in: unified endpoint management, cybersecurity, and data backup. And they culminate in this cyber resilience story that Elias is going to talk us through shortly. But each of those solutions is available to you to go back into your customers and register as an opportunity to ensure you maximize your profitability within that product set. So if you look at our partner program, what I'm effectively saying is, if you want to register unified endpoint management with your customer, you can. If you then want to go back in and you want to register cybersecurity, you can. And again, with data protection, you can. We've designed a program that allows you to maximize profitability by selling multiple technologies from N-able into your customer. And equally, what we've designed with the program is to make sure that we are very, very transparent in how much margin you can retain when we're working on opportunities with you, whether they're opportunities you bring to us. And I'll be honest, this program is designed to reward proactive partners. In the same way I just talked about you being able to register multiple technologies into your customers, that also means that other partners can also register those opportunities with that same customer, remembering, of course, that your customers potentially buy from other resellers. So it's about making sure that you don't just go and talk about what you're comfortable with around N-able, but it's about making sure you appreciate all the other technologies and then going in and introducing them. And that's how you can be most profitable with N-able. And then once you've built that business, if we look at point 3 on this slide, we're making sure that we give you an advantage over your competitors, over those organizations that haven't managed the life cycle of that customer when it comes to the point of renewal. And then if we look at point 2 on this, going back to the transparency point I made, it's about making sure that when we're working on opportunities, Matt, Elias, and the team are working on their own opportunities, that when we decide to work with a partner, we engage with that partner, that there is transparency in what you can expect to make. I've never supported programs where we have salespeople or sales leaders that are in a position where they can decide how much value they think that partner is adding to that opportunity. It shouldn't be that for that team to decide. There should be a program that agrees that if we're working with partners, that those partners are bringing value to us, and that value is in working that opportunity and helping us engage with the customer. And then, before I hand over to Elias, just in terms of the other things that we've introduced into this program, which I think are really going to help us build, certainly in your specific territory, is making sure that the revenue targets we've set for the different levels and the different tiers within our partner program are not set at a ridiculous level straight out the gate. We want to lock these revenue targets in until the end of next financial year, where we can start to really build those relationships and engagements with you, and you start to hopefully introduce us into your customers, and therefore build that alliance with N-able as we start to see you grow your business with us. And I want to be clear, and Matthew and I talked about this the other day, we're not expecting you to suddenly displace all of your Sophos or your Veeam or any of your existing data protection or security products. This isn't what our remit is about. But it's about offering an alternative where customers are not as happy with the service that maybe they've seen in other solutions, or indeed where some of your sellers believe that maybe they're not making as much money as they should, maybe the technology isn't where it needs to be, and actually just understanding that there are alternatives, and we believe that we have a fantastic alternative. Just a couple of other points then before I hand over to Elias, to my point around having that maturity of systems but also support infrastructure. We are building and have built a support infrastructure for our partners as well. And if you look on the premium level, as a premium level partner, we are going to be offering dedicated technical account managers. And back to the point that Canalis made, we're really interested in making sure that our partners feel that we do appreciate the work that goes into maintaining and securing the longevity of that customer. So it's not just about having incumbency margin, it's about making sure that we have something in place that means that you can remain credible with your customers and offer the best level of support and service to your customers. So that's it from me. I'm going to hand you over into the very capable hands of Elias, who is much more local than I am. And take it away, Elias. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I'll let you control the slides, and nice to meet you, everybody. So I manage the sales team for ANZ. I'm local here to Sydney, so looking forward to working with you a lot more closely. To piggyback on John's point regarding the margins and the different programs, this is a great opportunity not only for resellers because of the margins and because of all of these benefits, but because it aligns so well with where the market is going. Where the end user market is going in terms of annual spend. We're anticipating that by the end of 2028, for some reason it doesn't show there, but by the end of 2028, we're expecting the spend to go up to $2.6 trillion from the expected spend today of around 1.8, 1.9. So that's a 45% growth that we're expecting the SMB and the mid-market spend to get up to by within the next 3 years, really. It's coming up pretty soon. So it aligns just so well with the opportunities that resellers are going to have. And there's a few things that are driving this increase in spend, or the expect an increase in spend. If we just go to the next slide, John. It's primarily around these three key areas. They're not going to be a massive surprise to you. One of them is increasing cyber attacks, especially since 2020. We've seen such a massive spike in phishing attacks and ransomware and password attacks. Here locally in the region, I think everybody here has heard about the Optus hacks, the Medicare or Medibank hacks, and these are the very well-known ones, but there's hundreds of these instances happening every single day, and they're happening to organizations that are lesser known than, for example, Optus. And that's caused a lot of attention from the board level down in terms of security implementations these end users need to make. And a lot of resellers are starting to see that conversation happen with their end users. And then naturally, with a lot of things going to the cloud, the data set is growing. Data management is becoming a lot more complex. People are backing up to the cloud much more. They're backing up Office 365 a lot more. They're backing up Azure environments a lot more. Just the data is growing, and the need to manage that data, the need to move that data, the need to restore that data has become more important now than it's ever been in IT. And that's presenting a lot of challenges to end users. And if you kind of look at that flowing up to the resellers, there's traditionally been only a few ways to handle that, because that's what a lot of resellers have known and they've been accustomed to. And that's what we're hoping Cove is going to be able to help out with. And then last but not least is just the rising complexity. in IT environments. I think gone are the days of on-prem, of just strictly on-prem. Now you have on-prem devices, you have hybrid devices, you have office workers, you have remote workers, you have cloud applications, Azure services. There's just the complexity in just general management for the typical environment has gone up so much in recent years that's also proven to be challenging for a lot of end users, and that's what leads to a lot of tech sprawl. And now you talk to the average end user, and they're using 20 tools to handle their day-to-day when they could be potentially using half, if not less than that. So all of these things are what's fueling a lot of these end user increases in spend. And just go into the next one, Sean. And to that end, to Jonathan's point earlier, this presents a very good opportunity for resellers because it doesn't have to be a one and done. With N-able, you have three major product categories that can help you face these challenges head on when it comes to security, when it comes to backup and recovery, and of course, IT management. A lot of MSPs know of the term remote monitoring and management. A lot of end users they're not very familiar with that term. They know it as a unified endpoint management. It's the same product more or less, just branded a little bit differently. So that's also something that we have that can help you with addressing those needs. So if we go up to the next slide. Cool. So why is this overall important in terms of cyber resilience? Because, you look at 5 years ago, the main silver bullet was just have good antivirus and you're golden. That was more or less a lot of usually the approach that end users took. Now the conversation's a lot more nuanced. It's about not just one thing. It's how can you do a layered security approach to try and reduce your chances of a breach. But it's becoming more and more apparent that it's not a matter of if, it's more of a matter of when. So you see a lot of organizations adopting a left and a right of boom approach. Left of boom being the preventative, things like antivirus, endpoint detection and response, XDR, MDR, anything possible that they can do to reduce their chances of a breach or an incident happening. On the right-hand side of that, if and when the inevitable happens, it's happened. How do we restore the data? How do we get continuity? How do we get back to a point before we got a breach or an incident that occurred? And between the prevention, between that and the reaction to it, what a lot of end users want is that visibility into the environment, monitoring not just the devices, but also the users, the cloud applications, being able to have their finger on the pulse and being proactive about the day-to-day management. So this is what's really exciting about this, is it allows resellers to maybe go in with a particular product family, but then build their value with the end user from there by addressing these different challenges that they're having. Just going on to the next slide. So to kind of use the Apple term, the N-able ecoverse, so that can mean a lot of things with different vendors. But this really dovetails very well with what John was mentioning earlier. Again, with that one and done approach, it doesn't have to be a one and done. If you look at your typical end user, at a very base level, what they're really wanting to manage at a very baseline level are the devices, whether it's servers, workstations, laptops, network devices. They're wanting to manage users. They're wanting to manage cloud applications. That's just the baseline of what they need to do in the environment. We give them the ability of doing that a lot more effectively and efficiently with our unified endpoint management system, because they can remotely monitor, they can remotely control and support users, they can patch Windows, they can patch third party, they can automate a lot of the day-to-day management of IT that they might be spending just simply a lot of manual time doing. That's just the fundamentals. The next step that users want to do is start securing the environment. That's where you start seeing things like endpoint detection and response come in, XDR, MDR, which we'll get into shortly, vulnerability management, DNS filtering, password management, mail. In general, they start to look at the security posture of the environment. This is another thing that you can have the conversation with them about. And then last but not least, the data protection aspect. How can I back up my data? But backup is not truly the main important thing in a backup solution, as odd as that sounds. It's how can I recover the data? How can I test that the data is actually being backed up? And can I test the restores to make sure that if I need to do a restore, can I actually do a restore? All of these three pillars is what forms day-to-day management. we have these three product families. Yes, they talk to each other. They talk to each other. They have really good workflows. There's a lot of automation in between them. There's a lot of integration in between them. All of this integration, all of these workflows, they produce intelligence and insights. All of these intelligence and insights can be used to create workflows and automations. The workflows and automations are then introducing more insights and data. And it builds this compounding effect where you've created like a good monster in a way, where you have all of these tools in the environment and they're working hand in hand to amplify whatever the end user wants to accomplish. And we are not a closed-minded ecosystem. Yes, our products work very well together, but you'll notice with our integrations, our out-of-the-box integrations with our REST APIs, that we are also made to work with whatever your end user stack also is in place. Are they standardized on Sophos? No problem. Are they standardized on Fortinet? That's also not a problem. Or whatever vendor that they have sunk a lot of money into, we can also integrate into that ecosystem. So we're leveraging their existing systems and not having to start from scratch, which a lot of resellers appreciate, because that's one less barrier that they have to overcome when they have these conversations with end users. Going on to the next slide. So we're going to first cover Cove Data Protection and then go into the MDR, XDR. Whenever we start getting into the technicals, questions pop up in people's minds. I really want to encourage you to put these in the chat if you want us to cover them at the end of the call. Happy to do so. Otherwise, like John mentioned earlier, we're happy to engage on a one-to-one basis. So Cove Data Protection, this is our tool. Jonathan mentioned earlier that this was an acquisition. That is correct. That was from years and years ago. It was a tool back in the day called IASO, which today you know as Cove. So you look at the backup market now, and you look at the products that have led us to this point. They're very well-known products. They're not showing up on the slide here, but on the left-hand side, pre-2010, it's Veeam. Veeam, obviously, they have a big pedigree in the space. Everybody knows Veeam. They're kind of the default that a lot of people want to go out and resell. The problem that they were trying to solve is backing up virtualized environments and giving people a way to architect a lot of on-premise backups that they wanted to do. They were solving the problem of their time. Then came Datto, which introduced an appliance, and then came Rubrik and Cohesity, which introduced a cloud component to that appliance. So you'll notice that as time went by, a lot of these solutions were really built to address the solutions of their time, or the problems of their time, sorry. But you'll find that Cove is a lot better positioned today for where data backups and how people want to do data backups is going, which is to the cloud. So to that end, Cove is a cloud first, but not cloud only backup solution. So you think about what it takes to do backup nowadays, the typical way to do backup. It's a lot of on-premise focus. You needed to have an on-premise appliance or a backup appliance. You needed to have the application server. You needed to then make sure that the production environment is backing up to a local NAS. That NAS is also backing up potentially to a secondary NAS for that redundancy or that immutability. And then there may or may not be a cloud component. You look at all of these different things, these are all potential challenges for resellers, and they're potential challenges for end users, because it introduces a lot of complexity to the management of backups day to day. And the sale of backups as well too. Not only do you have to worry about potentially selling somebody or reselling them Veeam, you also have to size up the storage. You also have to estimate how much cloud storage they need. And then you're tying in a bunch of different pieces together. One bill for the cloud, one bill for the hardware, one bill for the backup software. And it starts to get very complex. Sales cycles start to really expand. And this is fairly common with a lot of these legacy solutions because they're very on-premise focused. All of these things that I just mentioned is exactly what Cove solves for. It's directly to the cloud. We use Equinix here in Sydney in terms of data residency. Everything is going directly to the cloud, but you can choose to have a local copy or a local cache if you wanted that faster restore. And if you want to take it a step further, you can also have a hot standby, as some people refer to it. It's a single multi-tenant solution, so you can have your end user can have all of their sites in one dashboard, 2FA enabled, data is encrypted at rest and in transit. From a reseller perspective, what you're really selling is the backup license, the software, the backup, the management. All of that is included in the cost of the license, so it really simplifies the go-to-market strategy that you can have with your end users. And again, as John was mentioning earlier, the purpose here isn't to go and rip out the current Veeam that you have. It's simply to offer end users an alternative where before they might not have been. And something that's a little bit more aligned with making them more cyber resilient, because a lot of cyber resilient companies are trying to reduce their on-premise presence rather than increase it. So if we go to the next slide, Jonathan. So there's a couple of key highlights. You'll notice that with Cove, you could do the device level backups and the cloud-based backups from one console. So that in itself is a differentiator because it helps reduce tech sprawl. If you notice a lot of your end users today, they might be using, just as an example, I know I keep picking on them because they're the most prevalent, but they might be using Veeam. But you know what? They have one set of product with Veeam for device level backups and one set of products when it comes to the Office 365, yet they're completely separated. Again, adds a lot more complexity. Within Cove, the one multi-tenanted console, it handles your device level backups. It handles your cloud M365 backups. You can back up Linux, Windows, Mac. You can do bare metal recoveries. You can do file and folder level recoveries, hot standby. You can back up cloud and local devices. So it really just has a very wide spectrum in terms of what it can help an end user capture and what it helps you in turn address. If you wanted to do recoveries, you could do it to Hyper-V, you could do it to VMware, you could do it to Azure. And again, you could just also do a good old-fashioned bare metal recovery. All of these are possible. And not only can you do it, but we can test the recovery on an automated basis. So that's one thing that you can offload from the end user having to do, so you could free up their time to do other more critical things in the environment. And when you purchase a license, or more specifically, when you sell a license and your end user purchases it, you are getting the storage included in that, so you don't have to size up the opportunity in terms of the storage space required. And then this is, I would say, a less sexy detail, but it's actually the secret sauce of Cove, which is the incrementals. On the slide, it says 60% smaller. That's because if you look at a lot of solutions out there, they tend to be image-based solutions. They're taking a snapshot of a snapshot of a snapshot in perpetuity. And even if they're taking the differences of data, it's still a very big snapshot. So what ends up happening, the data set grows, they need more storage. So there's a storage cost associated with that. And then because they have to do pretty chunky backups, it affects the end user's experience because, well, their users start to complain that the internet is running slow. Whereas with Cove, you'll notice that the change rate is what we call it, where typically in the market it would be between 10 to 15%. With Cove, it is 0.01 of a percent. So just to repeat, 0.01 of a percent. So what ends up happening is the end user can now do more frequent backups. They can do backups as frequently as every 15 minutes. And they don't have to worry about the end users complaining. They don't have to worry about their data growth or their data cost growing, and they can become a lot more aligned to compliance requirements instead of just doing, for example, the one backup a day, and then that's where they end things. And then, you know, where I'll leave on the Cove note here is the immutable part of it. A lot of people here have heard the word immutable, and really all that means is that it's just a copy of a copy and it cannot be changed. But the onus is on the end user to do, meaning they have to set up that secondary location, they have to manage it, they have to make sure that there's no access to it, and so on and so forth. We do that for partners. Anything that is backed up in Cove, we back up every hour, and we store that backup for 30 days. Every hour, we back up your backup. And then we store that data. It is separate from your command line interface. It's separate from your API. It's separate from the user interface. It is completely separate from the end user's interface. So we are taking care of that immutability for them without placing the onus on them and without an added storage cost. And that can be absolutely massive to any organization that you're speaking with that is really driving towards cyber resiliency, because immutability is definitely one of those requirements. So we're going to move on to the MDR XDR product. So acronyms. The security world is full of acronyms: MEDR, EDR, XDR, MDR. So we'll sort through the clutter in terms of what our product does. This is a product that it was and is currently still known as Adlumin. We purchased them in 2024, the end of 2024. If you see the word Adlumin or you see N-able MDR, just know that we're using the terms interchangeably. It is the same thing. So what we mean by XDR, MDR, let's break it down into two major pieces, which is the service component and the software component. The software component is what we call an XDR. It's what you might know as a SIEM or a SIM. I'm using the words interchangeably here. What we mean by XDR is that it is an ingestion platform. It is a cloud-based ingestion platform, and the data, because I know it's on everybody's mind, it does reside in Australia. So the XDR platform is ingesting data from multiple sources. It's ingesting data from cloud applications. It's ingesting data from the endpoint because our XDR has an agent that resides on the endpoint. It's ingesting data via syslog. It is ingesting these different sources of data, and here's the kicker, is that it ingests it from any vendor. So it is completely vendor agnostic. I know on the left-hand side, you see the likes of Sophos and CrowdStrike, and you see, Salesforce. These aren't products we sell, yet these are applications and these are products that our XDR has the ability of ingesting data from. We can also ingest data from M365 as an example as well too. You name it. This is completely vendor agnostic. So it really reduces the barrier of entry of a lot of resellers to pick up the phone and have the conversation with their end user, regardless of what the end user already has in their environment when it comes to either hardware or software that they're standardized on. So this XDR platform is taking this data, it is normalizing it, it is enriching it with user information as well. So it can tie, John's device to John's M365 account, so it could correlate behavior. We are doing the user entity behavior analysis. We'll work with, for example, other UEBAs as well too. So we're taking all of this data, we're normalizing it, we're enriching it, and included in this software is what is in technical circles known as the Security Orchestration, Automation, and Response, or SOAR. Long story short, it is an automated response to a predictable threat. So this is also built into the tool. So it can understand, for example, that Eli was in Sydney at 10 a.m. and then at 11 a.m., just an hour later, he's somehow in Hong Kong. That's a little bit odd. We're going to go ahead, we're going to lock out his account, we're going to reset the password, and then we're going to let the end user know that there was something suspicious. All of this so far that I have described is simply a part of the software component, which is the XDR component. Now, there's a better together approach here, which is the MDR. MDR, realistically speaking, they are managing the XDR for you. They are keeping tabs on the alerts. They are keeping tabs on the environment. They are looking in the end user's environment and monitoring for suspicious behavior. They're hunting for suspicious behavior. They're investigating suspicious behavior, and then they are remediating. And this is the key part. They are not just telling the end user that we have spotted a problem, now you go fix it, because nobody wants to get waken up at 2 a.m. in the morning just to get told there's a problem. Ideally, they want the problem to also get fixed. And this is what the MDR team's purview is to hunt and resolve threats instead of just being a glorified alerting service. And they are leveraging the XDR's information to action all of these insights. The same XDR that the end user has access to. So there's that transparency into that source of truth, which is the XDR platform. So you start to put these pieces together. It's vendor agnostic. It's completely cloud-based. The time to set this up, just to give everybody an idea, it takes from start to finish around 30 minutes to an hour to really set up. So this is not like a traditional SIM where you're spending days to just get it set up in the environment. So your time to trial, your time to value is just quite rapid. And this is another thing, is that you can actually allow end users to test this. How many solutions out there in the market, MDR solutions, will truly allow you to test the solution, including the service component? It's far and few in between, and this can really help you build that trust with the product with them. And then once the XDR platform or the MDR service is in place, in the future, it allows you as a reseller to go back to them and tack on or cross-sell and upsell other security services like vulnerability testing and user training and so on and so forth. So it's not just a one and done. You can actually build on the security component that they initially started out with. We'll just go to the next slide, Jonathan. And you'll notice nowadays, so where does MDR fit in? Because this is not going to replace antivirus. Well, what this is really supposed to do is think of it as a bubble wrap in the environment. I think maybe the animation is not playing there. But typically speaking, what you'll find in a user's environment is they have DNS filtering, they have firewalls, they have antivirus, they might have mail security. Again, done are the days of, you just have good AV and you're set. Now it's much more nuanced and multi-layered approach. Where MDR comes in is it's a bubble wrap across that entire environment. The XDR platform is taking in the data from their mail product, whatever it is. It's taking in data from Sophos, if that's what they're standardized on. It's taking in data from their firewalls. Let's say it's Palo Alto or whatever it is that they're using. It's taking in all of this data. It's giving the security team that insight and that visibility, and then they're able to action, investigate, and respond on the end user's behalf. So from an end user's perspective, they don't have to uproot everything that they've done just to go with proprietary software. This can bolt on top of what they already have. And for the reseller, picking up the phone and calling them, for your sales teams that are picking up the phone and calling, the barrier of entry is so significantly lowered because you don't have to tell somebody, if you want to use the software, you have to make a $50,000 capital expenditure on hardware. That conversation, can go out the window. So to just wrap up here, going to there's the animations. They were there. But yeah, it's just highlighting all the different things that end users have in their environment. So just wrapping up here, just go into the overall theme of the program. To Jonathan's point, what's in it for the resellers at the end of the day? And there's 5 main things. For one, the products themselves are solving a real problem in the market today. XDR solving the problem that a lot of solutions are proprietary. You have to do the full kit, software, hardware, service. It solves the real problem. Cove solves the problem of just complexity and giving you consolidation. All of these solutions are easy to deploy. You can deploy Cove within the next 10 minutes, from trial spin up to deploying on a server or a workstation or uploading a 365 tenancy. We're talking minutes, not days or hours. So it reduces the time to value between you and the end user, and it just makes the sales process frictionless. Moving on. This is my favorite, personally, is the local team. Of course, like between myself and Matthew, those are the faces that you're seeing right now. But we have a team of solutions engineers. We have a team of account executives locally, a team that is very motivated to help you have these conversations and to get in front of end users. Of course, you have Blue Chip as well too. They're an amazing distributor. We've had a very long-standing relationship with them. They're very across the products as well. Whether it's us or them or a combination of everybody helping you bring the deal across the line, or at least just having those initial conversations, I can't just tell you in enough words how motivated the team is. They're not looking at this as a threat to the business. They're looking at this as a very welcome addition and a natural progression to where we're trying to go. And there'll be an email at the end of this slide with the distro list for reaching us entirely as a team. We're channel focused, so as Jonathan was mentioning, this is not a nice to have. This is simply where we're transitioning to as a company to be channel focused and feeding all end user deals through the channel. And then last but not least, I'm sure what's brought everybody onto the call is the profitability. is the profitability associated with this, where you're getting, anywhere from 20 to 35% margin or discount, whichever term you want to use. That can be a real game changer. Again, not to necessarily displace what you have today with Veeam, but maybe to just start doing things a little bit differently with some next new business that you're trying to acquire and have some really good profits in the process. So I really want to thank everybody. I know we went through quite a bit of information. Feel free to put your comments or questions in the chats. But this is the distro list that reaches me, Matthew, Leanne, who we brought on board as well too, as the principal account manager. So she's your conduit between yourselves, the end user, blue chip, us, your go-to person. So this reaches all of us, and really hoping to hear from all of you at one point or another.
Thanks, Elias, and thanks everyone.
Yeah, thank you guys very much. We appreciate it. Thank you, Elias. Thank you, Jonathan. We've got a couple minutes if there's any questions that anybody wants to ask. If you don't know, so the question icon in GoTo is that little square chat box with the question mark in it. So if anybody's got anything they want to ask the team before we let Jonathan go to bed and everybody else gets on with work, please feel free to pop it in there, and we'll try and answer those the best we can right now.
I'm not sure anyone's brave enough to ask a question.
If people rather type it than speak it, no problem.
It's very true. Yes.
Well, I mean, I guess I'll ask Eli just one question. The covering off the different tiers of MDR. So just to want to explain to everybody the different tiers and particularly cover off breach prevention, because I know we do have a lot of Microsoft heavy partners in New Zealand that might be interested in what that's about.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's three major tiers to MDR. Well, starting from the left to the right, it just simply ingests more data, and there's more areas of focus for the Security Operations Center. So on the left-hand side, you have your breach prevention. So it's strictly monitoring M365 data ingestion. So it's looking for anything in the M365 suite, including the Windows Defender that could be running on a machine. So it's taking in the data from that, and it's there's an automated the SOAR, the automated SOAR that can action things like account lockouts or password resets. And there's also still the human element that is doing proactive monitoring 24/7, 365, so they can action something manually or leverage the SOAR to do that. So there is that level of protection. Again, all it is just M365. On the complete other side of that spectrum is what we would call MDR Advanced. So this is when the XDR platform is intaking data from all possible data sources: the endpoint, cloud applications, APIs, and most importantly, syslog information like firewall information. So it's really having a complete holistic view of the environment. And then the SOC team is able to investigate, hunt, remediate, and then give you a post-incident, hey, this is what happened, this is what you need to do in the future to resolve things. And then the middle offering is exactly the MDR Advanced without syslog. So what it does is it intakes data from the endpoint, it intakes data via APIs, via cloud applications, just not syslog, because there's obviously a lot of data intake that happens via the firewalls. So that's the only difference, is that it's all this, it's the same level of service, it's the 24/7, 365 SOC, it's the auto response, it's the access to the XDR platform. So those are the exact same thing between the advanced and the standard. The only difference is one looks at the syslog as well, and then the other one does not. So those are the three levels of MDR. Breach prevention, which is just strictly M365. You have standard, MDR standard, which now looks at M365, the endpoint and cloud applications and APIs. And then you have advanced, which does all of the above, as well as syslog data collection. And
Awesome.
you can
Thanks.
have, as in an end user, if well, actually, no, for if it was an MSP, I'd say they can have multiple licenses, and then each one of their customers needs to be standardized on one kind of license. For an end user, their entire environment would need to be one license or the other.
Awesome. Thanks, Eli. So a couple other questions very quickly. Sales and marketing material that N-able is able to provide to resellers to help them market the solutions?
Yeah, so I'll
Yeah,
tackle. Oh,
yeah, go for it, John.
no, go. Well, I was going to say I was going to tackle two questions in one there, because there's another question about how do I access the reseller portal. So our reseller portal is called Market Builder. You gain access to that by signing up as a reseller. So once you sign up as a reseller, we'll make sure that you have access to Market Builder, and that, as I said, is a single portal. And on that portal, we have all of the up-to-date collateral around all the technologies that Elias has talked us through. But equally, then we have training materials to take your sellers through how to position N-able. In terms of the technical accreditations, we don't currently have those today, but as I said earlier on, we're building those. We should have those in the platform within the next 3 months, which means you and your team can become technically certified within N-able. But also, Elias and the team have access to all that collateral as well. So if you don't want to go into the portal to find that, we can share that with you as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Jonathan. So if you guys do want to get in touch, the team did share their email address. Will you be able to get in touch with Eli, Matthew, and Leanne from N-able? You can also get in touch with us at Bluechip at nable@bluechipit.co.nz, and get in touch with myself and one of your account managers. So any other questions, please feel free to pass those along to us. We'll be happy to answer you guys, and hopefully we'll be in touch very soon. But a big thank you again for everybody for joining us. Jonathan, thank you for staying up so late. Eli and Matthew, thank you for joining so early. Really appreciate it, guys. It was an awesome session. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Lovely talking to you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
team.
everybody.
Have a good night and good morning. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.